you will spend about 10 years of your life on your phone. Your ancestors spent that same time doing something you have never done, not once, sitting in complete, unfilled boredom. For 300,000 years, every human who ever lived knew a kind of empty stillness that has almost completely vanished from the modern mind. And here's the strange part, they may have needed it. So, did ancient humans actually feel less bored than you do? The answer flips everything we assume about boredom on its head, because it turns out boredom isn't a flaw, it's a signal. And we may have just spent 100 years learning to ignore the one thing it was trying to tell us. Let's start with what boredom actually is. For most of history, nobody even had a word for it. The English word boredom barely existed before 1852, when Charles Dickens used it in the novel Bleak House. Think about that. A feeling this universal didn't get a common name until the middle of the industrial age. That timing is not a coincidence, because boredom, as we experience it, may be something the modern world manufactured. To understand why, you have to understand what your ancestors' days were actually made of. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups, the closest living window we have into the original human lifestyle, found something surprising. These people work astonishingly little. Studies of groups like the San of the Kalahari suggest they spend only around 15 to 20 hours a week getting food. By our standards, they have enormous amounts of free time, so they should be bored out of their minds, but they weren't, and the reason reveals something we've lost. Their downtime wasn't empty, it was full. It was filled with people, constant conversation, storytelling, gossip, ritual, music, the slow crafting of tools by hand. There was no such thing as being alone with nothing to do, because you were almost never alone. And there was always something to make, mend, or tell. Their time wasn't structured by a clock. It flowed. And here's the strange part. That kind of unhurried, socially rich attention may be exactly the state modern humans are starving for. But this is where it gets stranger, because the science suggests boredom was never the enemy. In 2014, psychologists at the University of Central Lancashire ran an experiment that sounds almost cruel. They gave people the most tedious task imaginable, copying numbers out of a phone book, and then tested their creativity afterward. The bored group didn't just do fine, they dramatically outperformed everyone else. Boredom, it turned out, was fuel. When your mind has nothing external to grab onto, it turns inward, it wanders. It connects ideas that would never have met otherwise. This is the state neuroscientists call the default mode network, the brain's engine for imagination, planning, and self-reflection. It only switches on when you stop feeding your attention from the outside. Now hold those two things together. For 300,000 years, your ancestors lived inside long, undistracted, mind-wandering hours. The blank spaces between tasks were where the daydreaming happened, where problems got solved, where the mind quietly built a sense of who it was. Boredom wasn't a void to be filled. It was the workshop where being human actually happened. And then we did something no humans had ever done before. We made the void impossible. First came cheap print, then radio, then television, but the real rupture arrived in your lifetime. The smartphone didn't just entertain us, it made sure the mind never has to wander again. Every empty second, the 2 seconds in an elevator, the moment waiting for a kettle, the pause before sleep, now gets instantly filled. Researchers have found that people will choose to give themselves painful electric shocks rather than sit alone in a room with their thoughts for 15 minutes. Let that land. We would rather feel pain than feel nothing. So, did ancient humans feel less bored? Almost certainly yes, but not because their lives were more exciting. Their lives were often slow, repetitive, and hard. They felt less bored because they never learned to fear the stillness. They lived inside it. They let their minds do the wandering that ours are now too distracted to do. We didn't cure boredom. We just stopped listening to it. And in exchange for never being bored again, we may have quietly given up the daydreaming, the reflection, and the deep wandering silence that made us who we are. Your ancestors sat in the emptiness every single day, and most of us will never know what they found there.